Recoil with the rifle, what am I trying to accomplish? I'm trying to accomplish a dot that lifts and comes back to what it was looking at, a recoil pattern that is consistent and predictable in its nature, and a durability and repeatability factor that I know how I'm doing this and I can recreate it, and it maintains during an aggressive string of fires. When I think about all the things required to shoot the rifle, I think connection to the rifle is valued above most things. If the gun is connected to me consistently the same way every time, I will get very consistent patterns of behavior and predictable patterns of behavior from the gun in recoil. So I want that. I want to know what the gun is going to do, not watch what it does necessarily. The way that I like to think about this, man, we've all had pistols before. We've all been told at a certain point that you shouldn't hold the pistol at the very bottom. And the reason is because the reciprocating mass of the weapon system is up high. I don't want to give that leverage over me and cause me to work harder than I have to. So I'm going to get my hand up higher on the back strap so that I can more easily make the gun do what I want it to do. I think that if you believe that and you think that that makes sense, but you are shooting a rifle like this, I think that's kind of all goofed up, right? So the reciprocating mass of the rifle lives up here and it rides through the buffer tube. So what you're doing when the buttstock's up off your shoulder like this is you're giving the gun leverage over you, and it's going to do more than it has to do. So one of the first things and the first cues that I give dudes is I'm always striving to have the top of the buttstock at or below shoulder level. As opposed to something like this, I want to get it down something like this. The issue that comes with this for most shooters that doesn't really have a tremendous amount of experience with the rifle is they drop the buttstock down and they hear all this noise about how your head needs to still be straight up, looking out the center of your eyeballs and all this and that and the other. And so we kind of have a problem here, right? So they're like, I don't know what to, you know. I'm not taking my head down here, right? Now, my head will certainly meet the gun at a certain point, but this shoulder, watch this magic trick, holy crap, right?
You're a wizard, Harry.
So I can stand like this and not move my head at all and just get the gun up to my eyeball without dropping down into the stock. When it comes to hand placements and pressures, the vast majority of the pressure that you're putting into the buttstock, into your shoulder, should come from the support hand. And the reason is, I think anytime we get an off axis, and the axis being the barrel line, anytime we get off axis levers and we start trying to pull on them, right, it causes the gun to do certain things. So vert grips pulling on those, mag wells pulling on those, that's all gonna cause weird things in recoil. I think the same thing can be said about the firing grip, right? So we're at the center point, the pivot point of the gun, and we're torquing backwards on it. I think that if anything changes about that pressure, the gun's behavior is gonna change, and I don't like to do that. I want to grip the rail, and I'm trying to put linear pressure through the buttstock into my body. As far as how I do that, what I'm trying to not do is connect to the gun and then have the elbow out. What happens when that occurs is if I drive or change the pressure into my body, the muzzle will start to go towards the elbow just by default of how this lever is created. Like I can't bring this closer to me without the elbow trying to push outboard, right? And the gun trying to follow that. So I like to do kind of what Frank Proctor calls a grip and hang. First time I ever heard that, I was like, I don't really know what that means, like hang. So what I'm doing is I'm gripping the rail and I'm kind of relaxing all of this and just kind of hanging that elbow from it. And what that does is it puts enough pressure and it does it efficiently enough that I can do it for a significant amount of time without fatigue. I don't get tired because I'm not really using a lot of muscle. It's just the weight of the arm hanging from that rail that's doing that. I certainly am pulling back into my body at some level of force, but it is nowhere near what I would call as hard as I can. It's just to hold the gun stable so that the buttstock is not moving in my shoulder. It's also to accomplish the collapsing of flesh and tissue that's in between my surface level of my clothing and my muscular skeletal structure. So if I were to take this rifle and set it up against a pillow, or you guys would call it a pillow, right? And I put that pillow up against a tree and I fire the gun's gonna soak into that and do like just a lot of unpredictable stuff, right? The only way that I can make the gun a little bit predictable and make it not as wild in nature is to collapse through that pillow and find the tree, right? And so what I'm trying to do is suck that pillow up and get connected to something that's more solid. I think the pillow lies in between your surface of your clothing and your muscular skeletal structure. When I'm making this connection, I'm pulling enough that I feel like I have connection to my collarbone, my pec, like my structure that is my body, not necessarily all the sweet meat and cupcake loving joy that exists in between that, right?
And just get all fat and sassy.
Most people are trying to drive a gun back into themselves more than they need to. So the way that I would kind of explore this is just going by the numbers, right? So number one, what's the first thing I want the gun to do? I want it to lift and come back to what it's just looking at. I think we can do this with just one single shot, right? So I'm gonna fire a single shot, assess how the gun lifts and returns, and assess the behavior of it, see if I want to change anything. I'm gonna make the connection that I like, aim in on a small area that I can watch what's happening. So I like to have a little visual reference point, and I'm just gonna fire a single shot. And so I assessed the gun, came up, back down to the spot, and then drifted to the left, right? So I gotta think about, okay, where does that pressure that's causing that to happen come from? I'm gonna make sure that the support hand, I'm gripping and I'm hanging from it. I'm not trying to drive it back into me with that elbow outboard, and see if I can kind of fix that. Perfect. Perfect. So that's working out pretty good for me. I like that. So now I'm gonna send another shot after that to be able to kind of take a look at the behavior of the gun in recoil. I wanna see if it's consistent in its behavior. So 2 to 3 shots at a pace that you would call a controlled pair. I'm aiming and consciously confirming each one of these sight pictures, and I'm just kind of watching what the gun does as far as peripherally. And so that looks pretty good. It's coming up to about a 1 o'clock, and it's just kind of dropping back in. If your gun's not making direct lines, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's fine. Now, what I need to do is see if the connection that I'm making to the gun will maintain during an aggressive string of fire. 3 to 6 rounds as fast as you wish you could shoot. I'm not necessarily looking at where the bullets go. This is more of a visual exercise than it is a performance. So I want to see what happens with the gun for 3 to 6 rounds. I'm really being intentional about taking a snapshot of what do I feel in my shoulder when this starts, and then freezing after it's over with and looking at what do I feel in my shoulder when it's over. So 3 to 6 rounds at a very aggressive pace. What do I feel? That feels pretty good. What do I feel? That feels pretty good. And so I like that. I think that's good to go. As far as from the hips up, that's how I would start the process of trying to explore recoil and what you want to do with the rifle. A thing that's going to become very important with the rifle is from the waist down. With a pistol, I don't find stance to be extremely beneficial or detrimental as far as the shooting goes. Now, certainly with the movement, it becomes a dramatic thing that we need to attack, but with the rifle, it can certainly cause some grief. If you're getting a lot of lateral movement, so the gun is, when it fires, it's jumping hard to your dominant side, right? So typically right-handed shooter is gonna see some right-hand trend, left-handed shooter, vice versa, right? Wrong-handers are gonna see the opposite of right-handers, should have been born different. When we're doing this, if you've got a tremendous amount of lateral trend, it's not necessarily that it's bad, it's that I want to give you some tools to use that you can mitigate it if you want to, right? So if you think about how is that motion coming into my body, and then how is that gun creating that lateral trend? So the dot is connected to the rifle, is connected to the buttstock, is connected to me. What's happening is when that rearward recoil is coming into you, if you build an angle for that recoil to jump into, what it's gonna try to do is recreate that angle. So it's trying to bounce off of that and then recreate the angle. If you want some of that lateral motion to go away, all you've got to do is just kind of square the wall up. Now, I'm not necessarily saying like try to be like dead center squared and locked up, but if you want some of that lateral trend to go away, just think about taking this shoulder and just bringing it more center line and in line with the other shoulder, right? And just kind of getting that torso a little more square. That'll typically take away a pretty good amount of lateral movement. As far as vertical movement, this is where the stance becomes involved. Vertical movement is a byproduct typically of people standing straight up. And if I were a 2x4 or a post or something that was sticking up and you were gonna push me over, the easiest place to do that is gonna be at the top of me, right? Great idea. Let's take some inertia and put it at the top of that post. That'll be super fun, right? And so a really good cue for whether or not your stance is solid is your toes. If you watch my toes while I'm doing this, right? When I'm shooting the gun, what I'm looking for is this right here. So if I stand like I'm ordering a milkshake and then my toes start to come up, I start to step back. Anything weird like that that starts to happen, we want to mitigate the stance to affect that. Like the gun's not doing this in your shoulder, right? It's pushing you back and then you're coming back forward. What I want to do for that is to create a good solid foundational base that mitigates that as best I can control practically. A good starting point is at minimum shoulder width apart. I like to be a little bit wider than that. And then at minimum, half step to a full step back. And then the really big part of this that's going to be super important is to load into the quads and knees and also the hips. A lot of people don't do the hips. They'll load into the legs, but then the upper half is still upright and moving around. I think about pushing my butt back a little bit, right? right? And that gets me some load in the hips. And what I've done is I've taken this post that's trying to get pushed over from this, and I've turned it more into this. And so now that recoil is gonna kind of travel through me into the ground a little bit better, as opposed to here where it's pushing me backwards. Looking at those things, the way you connect to the gun, the pressures that you're putting into your body, how you're putting those pressures into your body, where your support hand is while you're doing that, how you're affecting what's happening with the gun with just your posture, I think will pay dividends on the back end of how you like to shoot a gun. Understanding that what we're trying to do is we're trying to get a gun that comes back to what it was just looking at first and foremost. We're trying to make the recoil pattern be consistent and something that's predictable. I can yield on the side of I know what the gun is gonna do because it always does. That's always gonna be a better way to shoot than I hope this goes well, let's see what happens. And then the durability piece of do I know how I'm doing that and can I repeat it and can it maintain through an aggressive string of fire? Once I can accomplish those things, I think you'll find that recoil with a rifle is not as challenging as you might have thought.